They use it every year.
We got a picture of them.
I watch Paul, or everyone, but they stuck our hand in every time we walk. Oh, Daddy shared it, it brings me surprise. I even got your I'm trying to get a job. See, that's how much I know. Thank you.
Good.
Pretty far back.
We got them at the table up there. You want me to get it for you?
I got it.
Like a
Okay.
therapy. She has to do therapy every day.
Yeah,
I don't even know what the because my granddaughter.
The night if you want. Just to make it.
Y'all put chips on your sandwich?
Is that just me?
Every time we go to the beach, that's when we pack the lunch. About to make a sandwich. Put it in the cooler, get it back to drink it with it. For some reason, we can't.
You don't have to.
Sandwich chips on for that. I guess so.
Yeah.
Salt, I guess so. But like at home, I'll never do it at home.
She both of them died.
He's the oldest one's 20 months, and the youngest one is 7. The Kennedy, the oldest, is just running around, making noises, talking in their language as best you can. And the little boy just sits there and watches her and laughs. I mean, he just continuously smiles and laughs. It's cute. They are, and I was telling Miss Ruth that she's sleeping, she's a good sleeper. Like her, she's out, she'll sit there and talk and sleep for an hour. She sleeps 7:30 to 7:30. We'll put him down at 7, he'll sleep 7 to 7. So that was the difference right there. Whenever they started sleeping all the way through the night, it made a big difference.
That's just tortillas.
So they're
He's
out.
got Dave running around running
He
errands.
doesn't have to come to pick them up.
It was an anniversary, so I'm gonna work in their office.
You know, some of those things, you gotta move all those
I love
things, you know.
Jeff's a great
And,
man.
uh,
Very quiet.
building services.
Whenever you sing,
Yeah.
in the summertime, Jeff used to mow his grass twice a week. I think he
My
was
daughter,
just
mother-in-law,
dude, they cut his grass.
she was from Boston, those metal stairs.
But the glow are too, they,
Yeah.
you know, that side of the kitchen.
We went to Oak Island, this past summer with my family. And then my wife and I went back, just us two without the kids, we left the kids with mom and dad. So we had some just
The storage closed, of course.
alone time for about 2 or 3 days, which was much needed, so we went back to Oak Island, so.
Friends, we have 2 speakers today, so I'm going to go ahead and begin our program. Y'all continue eating. Again, this is part 2 of our Lunch and Learn series, Unlocking the Mysteries of Life Planning. If you missed last week, or if you want to remember some of the things that Daniel said from last week, it is on our church YouTube page. I'm going to post that on Facebook as well and on the church website, just so that not everybody knows how to navigate YouTube, and it'll be easier just click a link and get there if you want to go back and look at those videos. This one is also live streamed today, so if you hear something and you want to hear it again, these guys have your cards. You can always call them, but if you just want to go back to the video, you can do that as well. Today, we're going to be talking about funeral planning and hospice care. And so for the funeral side, we have Walt Braxton. He's the office manager and funeral home director at Braxton Funeral Home. He began his career in funeral service while attending the University of South Carolina, working full-time with Thompson Funeral Home. And after graduating from Gupton Jones College, is that right?
Yep.
Of funeral service, Walt came home to York to join his family and his father at Bratton Funeral Home full-time. So Bratton Funeral Home was founded in April of 1999 by Walt's father, Kenny Bratton, or Kenneth, according to the Bible, and continues to serve families with compassion and care. Walt is married to Gracie Burrell Bratton, and together they have 2 children, Kennedy and Brooks. Our other speaker is Kane. Hello. I was given bios this time. Kane Rowell, he's the Chief Operations Manager or Officer at Hospice and Community Care. Kane grew up in Monroe, North Carolina, and has lived in Rock Hill for the past 8 years. He's worked at Hospice and Community Care for nearly 7 of those years, but his connection to hospice care began much earlier when his mother was a hospice patient during his teenage years. And that experience gave him a lasting appreciation for the importance of hospice services. And outside of work, he enjoys spending time with his wife, Melissa, and their nearly 3-year-old son, Hayes. So we welcome both of these speakers here today.
Thank y'all so much for having us today. We've worked with Bratton Funeral Home for years. Hospice and Community Care is a nonprofit agency, and we've served this community for 40 years. This is our 40th year anniversary of being in the community. And so we were founded by local folks in the community that just felt there was a need for end-of-life care. And so they went door to door trying to raise awareness and funds to build a program. And then in 1985, we got accredited with Medicare. And we've been off to the races since then. And so partners like Bratton Funeral Home, we work with them obviously closely day to day. But community partners like that are the reason that we're still able to do this 40 years later. And so at the end of the day, our focus is on the patients and families in our community that need our services. And so our services range from palliative care to hospice care. And so I will dive into some of the hospice care stuff today. I'm not going to try to go over both palliative and hospice. It gets a little confusing, but I'm happy to answer questions afterwards if you do have questions about those. So raise your hand if you've experienced hospice care, whether through a loved one, a friend, some sort. Okay, so about half the room. Okay. So when it comes to hospice care, there's a ton of myths and misunderstandings about what exactly it is. A lot of people think of hospice care as like, last few days, right? That's when hospice gets called in, they care for the patient before they pass away. Would you believe we've had patients on hospice care for 2 to 3 years? 2 to 3 years. And that is not what people think of when they think about hospice care. And so, as a nonprofit here in the community, we're up against a bunch of for-profit agencies. So there's multiple hospice agencies. Some people think there's just one. Like hospice is just one group, but there's multiple. There's 20 plus here in York County alone. And so as the lone nonprofit in this space, we're kind of a unicorn. You know, we are not your typical hospice agency, not just here, but across the country. And so part of that is we get to support patients regardless of their ability to pay. So whether you have Medicare, Blue Cross Blue Shield, any of those Medicaid or commercial insurance payers or no payer, we provide that care. But that is how we get paid as an agency, as Medicare or the insurance reimburse us for the care we provide for patients. But again, we care for patients regardless of their insurance or ability to pay. Have you heard of the Wing T. Patrick Hospice House? Yes. Okay. So that is our inpatient unit. So as a hospice care agency, we provide care in a few different places. One being at home, so at a patient's private residence, or if they call a facility home, assisted living, nursing facility, we can provide hospice care there as well. And then lastly, at our inpatient hospice facility, the Wing T. Patrick Hospice House. We built that in 2008. It's got 16 beds, and we typically have anywhere from 6 to 13 or 14 patients there at one given time. With hospice care at home, our team comes to you, right? So we've got our team of nurses, nursing aides, social workers, doctors, nurse practitioners, spiritual care providers, volunteers. It's an entire team that comes to the house to provide hospice care. And so you say, well, when do you need hospice care? Like, when do you call that service in? And Medicare defines that as having a terminal diagnosis that a doctor, says you have 6 months or less to live. Now, that doesn't mean that that patient's only going to live 6 months or less. It just means with the current diagnosis they have, if the disease runs its course, they believe that patient could pass away in the next 6 months. And that's all you need to be appropriate for hospice care. And so once the patient's made the decision, hey, I don't want to seek curative type treatments for my disease, that's when hospice care can be called in. And so a lot of times we'll see patients on the palliative care side, which is a secondary type service, that are not seeking treatments for their diseases. They are simply wanting to be comfortable. They just don't understand the benefits that come with hospice care as opposed to palliative care. So hospice care becomes just this primary care where we are your go-to for everything. We are your 24-hour call service. If you have some kind of pain crisis or questions about your medications, you call us. Instead of going to the hospital instead of going to the urgent care, you call us. We come out to the house. So it really is all that you need kind of packaged all together in this team of hospice care. And so once a patient is appropriate for hospice care and they decide to go forward with hospice care, Medicare benefit is fantastic. It covers everything. It covers your medication. It covers the equipment that you may need. It covers the care that we provide. So the visits that all the nurses, nursing aides do each week is all covered. And so really the only challenge that we see is just the support that the patients have, right? And so that's where it comes down to, where is that patient gonna live? So home patients receiving hospice care, we have our team that come out and provide the services during the week. But during the time when we're not there, while we're available over the phone, that's where the family typically is providing that caregiver support for the patient. Raise your hand if you've been a caregiver before. Okay, so you know how challenging that can be. We recently did this. My grandfather was a hospice patient about 2 years ago, and we did this. We all took turns. Me, my dad, my uncles, my aunts, we all just rotated days, spending time with them. And it's taxing, I mean, it's challenging. But there are people that is what they do, and it's just one person. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a son, maybe it's a daughter, and that's what they do. They are the primary caregiver. And so hospice is really meant to be a benefit, not just for the patient, but for the family as well. To support them, educate them, train them on how to be an excellent caregiver, but also just to give them some support, give them a break. So one of the keys that we can offer that our competitors can't offer, for-profit competitors can't offer, is respite. So think of a home patient that's on hospice services at home. Caregivers burn out, caregivers just tired, they need a break. That patient can come to the hospice house for up to 5 days at a time, completely cared for, completely handled the way they would be at home by our staff. So we're feeding that patient, we're with that patient 24/7, and that gives the caregiver and the family time to take a vacation, run some errands, lay in bed all day, whatever it is they want to do, just to kind of recharge. So then after those 5 days, that patient comes back home and resumes hospice at home. And again, this is a part of the Medicare, Medicaid, and commercial insurance benefit. It's completely paid for. It costs nothing for the patient or the family. So it's just a wonderful resource that we can offer at the hospice house. And then another level of care that we have at the hospice house is what we call a GIP. You don't need to memorize that, but essentially what that is just patients that are end of life within the last 2 to 5 days or so of life, or a patient that's having a pain crisis. So these types of patients typically would go to the hospital to have their symptoms managed, but under the hospice benefit, they can come to the hospice house where we can give IV medications, just stronger interventions to manage their symptoms, and that's completely paid for, again, by Medicare. So it's just a nice resource to have. But again, I think at the end of the day, like I know for my family, when we went through this with my mother and with my grandfather, hospice to me is so much more beneficial for the family than anything. Don't get me wrong, the patient gets great care, they get to be comfortable, try to have a better quality of life, but really the family receives so much benefits from the support that our staff gives the patients and just gives them as well. So one thing I would encourage, I know Walt will probably talk about this a little bit, it's just, we don't like to talk about death in this society we live in. We like to try to push that to the side. And so often, and my family went through this with my mother too, we try to wait, and we just kind of kick that can down the road. And then when it comes time when a patient does need hospice care, typically they've waited so long, they're not receiving the full benefit of hospice. And so a lot of times we see families that are just in crisis. They've struggled so much on their own to try to battle whatever that illness is their loved one's going through, and so when we get to them, they are just burnt out and unsure of what to do next. And so if you can plan ahead, think about some of the things that you want for yourself when it comes that time. I think part of what Walt will probably talk about too is just the pre-planning when it comes to funerals and burials. Just any of that stuff you can do ahead of time. You will be so glad you did, and your family will be so glad you did too. So that would just be my piece of advice for that. And just really quick on hospice and community care, a few of the other things that we offer outside of hospice and palliative care as a nonprofit that might be of benefit. We have what's called the Caring Closet. We started this about 7 years ago. It's completely ran by volunteers at our agency. It started as like a cubicle in this wing of our office that we no longer use. And we were trying to figure out what we could do with the space to make it useful. And so we decided, let's just collect medical equipment that people don't need anymore. And we've heard from people that needed that stuff, they just couldn't find it. So let's collect it and see what happens. That cubicle has turned into basically a warehouse, like 4 times the size of this room. It is a massive space. And we started out, I think the first year we had about 250, 300 people that came through and got some equipment. We're averaging almost 100 people a week that come through and get some type of equipment. And it can be anything from wheelchairs, walkers, briefs, diapers, feeding tube solution. I mean, you name it, we probably have it. So, instead of going to buy that equipment or go through your insurance, just call us and see if we have it. It's completely free. You don't have to have any kind of link to our organization or be a patient. You just have to have a need for some equipment. And so certainly, let others know about that if you know somebody that needs it. I've left some brochures back there with the information on it too. So maybe keep some here at church as well. And then lastly, just our resale stores. We have a resale store in Rock Hill, right off Cherry Road, beside Planet Fitness. It's like a Goodwill type store, but you can find some deals. There's some deals in there. And all that money goes back to caring for the charity care patients, so those patients that don't have insurance and don't have the ability to pay. So you're supporting those patients when you shop there. And then also if you have stuff you want to donate, furniture, clothes, anything like that, we will gladly take that. And we have a couple of guys that will pick up the heavier equipment, or heavier furniture if you don't want to lug it around. So I think that's it.
Good.
Yeah. And then I guess we'll save questions for the end here.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Perfect.
Thank y'all.
Before I start, I just want to say, when you read obituaries and you see memorials made out to a certain place, a lot of people list hospice because their loved one had hospice care. That's a good thing to pay attention to because the good ones are mentioned, because families do want to praise the hospice care team that took care of their loved ones. We have hospice and community care a lot that we mentioned in there. They actually had two of my grandparents, not to promote them or anything, but I know firsthand, having a family member going through hospice. Both of them were at Wayne T. Patrick Hospice House. They took great care of my grandparents and better care of us. So we're fortunate to have them around here. Thank you. Also, Miss Brenda, thank you. I know you're working. I'm sure you're watching maybe. Thank you for calling Braxton Funeral Home to speak about pre-planning funerals. And I had Ronnie Bells to thank, but he didn't introduce us. So, Nick did a great job. There's a lot of information that goes with pre-planning. I'm going to touch the higher points, but I do encourage you, if you have questions and you don't get to ask your questions today or have questions later on anytime, please give us a call. Doesn't hurt to ask any questions. We're more than happy to go over everything we can for you, answers any questions that you might have. And if we don't have the answers to it, we'll find it and call you back. Like Kane said, death is one of those things that you don't like to talk about. You push it to the side, put it on the back burner, so to say. But it's something that we're all going to encounter. No one is going to make it out alive. So to pre-plan for a loved one, it's easier to do it before the time that they pass away. One thing to check off that list, make sure everything's covered. Let's see. The one thing you don't want to, when we meet with families, the one thing we don't like to encounter with them is, I don't know what my mom wanted. I don't know what my dad wanted. Nick and I were talking earlier, it's hard to meet with a family when you ask them a question and they say, I don't know. Pre-planning stuff such as family members' names spelled correctly, Bible verses for the service, songs for the service, stuff like that you can pre-plan for. Also, when someone pre-plans for a funeral service, it's not left to the children or a spouse to make those decisions. If, say, there's a lady whose husband has pre-passed away and she's now passed away, her next of kin is the one that's going to be making her decisions. That could be her son, her daughter, 2 sons, 2 daughters, whoever's her next of kin. If they butt heads on what they want to do for mom, majority of the vote is going to get it unless there's an executor of the estate. Power of attorney ceases to exist after death. So that's an important thing of pre-planning your funeral. Different ways to pre-plan for funerals. You could pay it in full, which would be a guaranteed contract. What that contract is locking your price in at that day's price. You're paying for everything you can possibly pay for. That's the services, casket or urn, the vault, opening and closing of the grave, small things such as obituaries, stuff like that's being paid for. That's obituaries on our website, sorry, not on newspaper. The guaranteed contract is, it covers the cost of inflation, so to speak. So like I was saying, if you're locked in at that price, say you passed away, say you pre-planned for your services, 2025, you passed away in 2045, with that guaranteed contract, you're locked in at 2025. Does that make sense? So any of the cost of the inflation difference there is not on y'all or anything. Your next of kin, your family member left behind does not have to pay for that stuff, okay? If you pay it in full, it goes as like a death insurance. What that does is it's money in account. I have things to pass out earlier, and I'll get to that later, but it goes into an account where this money cannot be touched, taken out, or anything unless a death certificate is presented. Meaning this money is just for funeral expenses, okay? Non-guaranteed, there's different types of non-guaranteed contracts. Non-guaranteed contracts, or say you come in, I want to just give you all my information and start a payment plan, or just pay you whenever I can. What we do is start a account with a local bank. It goes into a trust, and we'll give the account number. You'll get all these paperwork, copies of the paper that we fill out with the account number on there, so you can call them anytime you wanted to check the balance on there. We'll always keep a balance of the account. If you say you want to pay a certain amount, and say, sorry, draw a blank. You want to come back and make payments on that. What we do is we just put that money into an account number, which is your account number. And the only thing is, it does not lock in that funeral expenses. So again, if you passed away in 2045, but you open that account into that trust in 2025, you still have to make payments to that day that you passed away. I know that gets kind of confusing. Life insurance, that's another way of non-guaranteed. Say I have a life insurance policy with so-and-so company for this amount. I want to use it to pay for my funeral expenses. You can put that in, make it a non-guaranteed contract, and have that insurance company pays for your funeral expenses, but the funeral expenses will be the cost of the day you passed away, okay? Also, you can come in and make arrangements saying, hey, I don't want to prepay for anything, I don't want to open an account, but I just want my family to know these are my wishes. You know, this is the family members that I want listed in the obituary, this is memorials we won't list in the obituary, but this is also, you can pick out, this is what casket I want or something close to it. This is what vault I want. This is what services I'd like, whether it be cremation, burial, cremation with a service, immediate burial, direct burial, all in one day, split it up, visitation the night before, have the service the next day. Different things like that. A lot of people ask, you know, what if I make pre-arrangements with Braxton Funeral Home and Braxton Funeral Home goes out of business? I don't see that happening because I want to live a long, healthy life, and I feel like I was born for this. The Lord placed me in this type of business. If Braxton Funeral Home were to no longer be available, the funeral home that bought our Braxton Funeral Home would take over those pre-needs. They would honor those contracts. Also here, people will ask, well, you know, we got a pre-need with Braxton Funeral Home in York, South Carolina. What if I passed away in Jacksonville, Florida. What the easiest thing we would do is, depending on how your services are, whether it's a cremation or a burial, cremation there, it will be, the easiest thing for the family is for us to file for the death certificate, or the death certificate be filed for, and then we send them that contract so that they can collect the account, the money from that account. So it's not, you don't have to worry about moving away and losing your pre-need. Once you make that pre-need, it's in as a guaranteed contract, okay? I know I got a lot of notes to cover, and looks like we're pretty good on time. In the back, I have a packet, which is a guidebook. It has questions in there where you can write your family's information, things like your birthplace, mom and dad's full name, just vital information that we would need to file for death certificates, would also use to help write an obituary. That's in that white folder, and there's some of y'all have it with you. Also, there's room in there for you to jot down notes, helpful scriptures, songs, poems, anything like that. You can even write that you want to be buried in a red dress or a tie or no tie, stuff like that, that your kids wouldn't even think about. A lot can be pre-planned, and more time to pre-plan than at the time of passing. A lot of people, we grieve when we lose a loved one. We have a lot of things going on in our mind at that time. Probably the last thing we want to think about is, did mom want to wear this red dress or blue dress? Also back there are some pins. I know veterans, another good thing that when you're pre-planning, those that are veterans, things like a copy of your DD 214, that's very helpful with not only getting a veteran memorial flag for the service, but also for grave markers, stuff like that, benefits from the VA. And of course, back there also pens and mints, so help yourself. We have plenty of those. I know I just ate lunch. If you have to go back to work, help yourself to a handful of mints. I believe that wraps it up for me. It's all right if we just ask for questions now. And like I said, if you think of something later on today, tomorrow, next week, whenever, my card's back there. Someone answers that phone 24/7, so they'll get in contact with me or whoever. I'm more than happy to answer any questions for you. Okay. Yes, sir?
If you did a pre-plan for a payment and you paid it off in a year, that's when your final expenses would go in, you would be locked in
When
at
it's
that rate. And
paid in full, yes,
say
sir.
2027.
Yep.
And we paid off our arrangement,
Mhm.
and that's where you would lock into it and.
Yes,
you would
so
be done.
we would take that non-guaranteed contract that you started, and it has that account number, when you made that payment and paid it in full,
Mhm.
then we would transfer that into a guaranteed contract, saying the payments are made in full in the account of whatever your account number is. We'd send you a copy, we'd send the bank a copy. What that does is locks you in now at that guaranteed contract at that price.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there interest paid on that money?
In the trust, there's not, but on that, when you pay it in full, it does accumulate some interest, it does. And what that interest does is help for that inflation. Any other questions? Yes,
Do you
ma'am?
have an on-site crematorium?
Not on site, no, ma'am. Our crematory that we use is in Charlotte. They're actually our vault company.
Okay.
When Dad worked at funeral home, I say Dad, Kenny Bratton, I'm not sure, I know some of y'all know him, but when he worked for York Funeral Home, they used Yates, which is the company that we use for our vaults and cremations. So it should speak volumes as to why we still use them 40, 50 years later. We trust them. They do a great job, very reasonable and very clean. You know what I'm saying? So we do not have a crematory on site yet. So. Yes, ma'am.
Do you mind going through the process of a eval? And
Okay, so are you saying, what's the steps when someone passes away? Okay. If someone passes away at home or anywhere and they're not under hospice care or a nurse, home nurse or anything like that, whoever's there with that person, hopefully there's someone with them, would have to call 911. Report that they believe someone's passed away. They would send EMS, and then the coroner would come to pronounce that that person has actually passed away. Most of the times it's up to that coroner whether they want to transport that person to the morgue, or if they know of a funeral home, if they had pre-arrangements, stuff like that, they would contact that funeral home to come to the house to make that removal. If someone passes away and they're in hospice care,